WordPress, the industry's leading content management system that makes building scalable websites a breeze. But what if I told you that with this tool alone, you could build a website that could handle millions of concurrent users just like Yeezy.com? A website that sells e-commerce products that gets millions of visitors per day. And that's exactly what we're going to be building today. An e-commerce store for Kanye, because right now it looks like his site doesn't even have any products. Now, our e-commerce store is going to be using WordPress as a headless CMS with WooCommerce, and we're going to be using Nextjs15 as our front end. And the cool part is our e-commerce store can scale to millions of concurrent users at once. So this video can help you if you're just looking to learn how to use WordPress as a headless CMS for your front-end application. So first we will set up WordPress locally. This way we can test and build the website on our local machine. Next, we will build the front-end application, which will look very similar to what he's had in the past. And finally, we'll look at what to consider for hosting. But before we move forward, the sponsor of today's coffee is Alan. Thank you so much for giving back to us. This way we can give you so much more free value just like this. And also, we hit 100,000 subscribers, so thank you so much for this. I've been waiting for 1 year, and we finally got this. And honestly, it just feels unreal. I mean, we've only posted 10 videos. And if you're wondering how hard you got to work to get one of these, just spend 1 year, lock yourself in a room, give away all the things that you would charge $1,000 for, just post 10 videos, 10 extremely valuable videos, because that's how many videos we posted. As long as you can do that, you'll make it as well. So thank you so much for joining this journey. Now, if you haven't subscribed, I think you might want to, because the type of projects that we build is something that you will not find on YouTube. So by subscribing, you get notified when these awesome projects come out. So don't forget to subscribe, because we might just never meet again. With that being said, let's jump right into this video. So this is the website that we're going to be building Kanye West. Now, this design is very similar to what Yeezy.com had in the past, which makes our life super easy, no pun intended. And the reason is simply because they have a minimal branding design. And so this project is literally for anybody. Even if you are a beginner, you will know how to build this from start to finish. Now, first of all, we're going to have a cart right here where you can take a look at the items in your cart. And you also have a toggle up here to show more menu items, which you can, of course, add in the future. Now, if you take a look here, when you hover over each product, you can see the name and the price. When you click on the product itself, that takes you into the product details page. And notice how blazing fast everything loads. And this is exactly why we need to use WordPress as a backend, because data is served insanely fast because of Lightspeed technology. Now, when I click on one of these products, I can read the description and I can add one of the products to my cart. I can also add multiple quantities of the products as well. So for example, I'm just going to keep this at 1 so I can demo the rest of this application as well. So let's go back to our cart right here. And if you click on the cart, it's going to show you that you have 1 of these added to your cart. You can also increment this up and down, and it's going to reflect all the way at the bottom in the subtotal. And then you can click on the checkout. When you click on checkout, it's going to take you to a Stripe page with the updated payment showing the exact quantity that you purchased and the total amount. That's pretty much it. So let's jump straight into this project. So the first thing I would do is join our free Discord channel. So go ahead, grab your phone and scan this barcode. It's going to take you into our Discord channel, Web Prodigies, where you can get access to all of the assets that we build and give out for free. Not only for this video, but for also all of our future projects as well. So for example, you see Vivid boilerplate code is put in here. That way you don't have to copy paste. I mean, you don't have to type anything, and you can use similar assets that we're using in the project. The other thing is, not only are you going to get access to assets, you're also going to get access to a thriving community. There's about 7,000 SaaS developers around the world who are building and launching their own SaaS. So you can take a look at what they're doing, learn from them, see how much they're making, see if it's, your ideas are feasible, and also help them, all that kind of stuff. So we're just building a great community. So don't forget to join the Web Prodigies Discord channel. Okay. Once that's done, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder. And please name it as such. So Web Prodigies dash Yeezy, okay? And then you want to drag it and drop it into your Visual Studio Code. Now you can use Bun, you can use pretty much, NPM, PNPM, whatever you want. I'm going to use bun. So I'm going to say bun x create dash next dash app at latest, and put a space and put a period sign. Okay. And go ahead and hit enter. And for TypeScript, hit yes. For ESLint, yes. Tailwind, yes. For source, I'm actually going to hit no. And app router, we want to hit yes. TurboPack, yes. And no for import alias. And that's going to install everything. Okay. For this project, I just want to use the app router just to keep things simple. Next, go ahead and open up a tab and you want to look up local WordPress. Okay. You're going to find this application. Go ahead and install this app. So this is essentially just going to help us pretty much set up WordPress locally. And then once we're ready to deploy, then I'll show you how to do that as well. But for now, we just want WordPress locally so we don't have to pay when we're just developing. And then once we're done developing, then we can focus on what we need to do for deployment. So now I'm just going to click on this. I already went ahead and installed it, but make sure you install it. It's completely free. Install this for your device. I'm using Mac, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so once you're done, you might see this page if you already have an account, but if you don't, go ahead, sign in, log in, do all that kind of stuff. And then you're going to see maybe a create site button on the page. I see it at the bottom left corner. So if it's your first account, first project, you might not, have the same layout, but make sure you have something like this or click, add new site or local site. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Then it's going to take you into this page where it says create new site. Click on that and then click continue. Then for this, you can give it whatever name you want. I'm going to call it Web Prodigies Easy. Okay, like this. And once this is done, you can look at the advanced options. You can change this as well, but I want to set it to the same that it already has. Then click continue, click on preferred, click continue. And for this, please set it to admin. And for password, set it to whatever you want, but you can just keep it simple, right? Just use admin, okay? So once that's done, you can go ahead and click on add site, and that's going to spin up a site for you. So let's just give that a second. All right, so once that's done, you should see stop site up here. That means it's actually running. And you'll also see that it has this green icon right here, okay? So go ahead and click on WP, which means WordPress admin, and it's going to take you to the admin dashboard. And I'm going to set the exact password and the email that we just created, right? So go ahead and put that in and then go ahead and click on login, and that should take you into your dashboard. Now, as you all know, we are going to be using WordPress with WooCommerce. And if you don't know what that is, well, think about it this way. It's a super awesome plugin that does everything e-commerce related, such as creating a store, a checkout, a cart, all that kind of stuff done for you through a plugin, right? And so this means you can speed up the process of building your applications. And the cool stuff here is we're using WordPress as a backend for our Next.js application. So in the start of this video, I probably explained even more in depth and detail as to what we're going to be doing and why we can do this, why we can use WordPress as a backend and why we need to in the first place. And so you can watch that to get more of an idea of how all of this works, right? But the whole point here is we want to speed up our process of creating a store. And so that's why we're going to need WooCommerce. So go ahead and click on this, and let's first install that plugin. So click on plugins, click on add new plugin, and then you want to look up WooCommerce, or I think this should find it. Okay, and you're going to find WooCommerce like this. Please do not download any other plugin that has these weird names that say WooCommerce, all right? It's this one. So WooCommerce, click on install now, and then let's just give that a second. And then once that's done, go ahead and activate this plugin as well. Okay, and now it might take you into a page like this. You don't have to set up the store. It's already done, I believe. You can just click on skip guided step, setup process, and this should be fine. Let me just set United States. Okay, and then click on continue, and that's just going to spin up some boilerplate stuff for us. Now, typically speaking, yes, you might have to fill in all of this information from a, maybe a production standpoint to give your store more info, but we don't need that. What we're going to do is we're going to go to products. So click on the sidebar, go to products, and just go to all products. So now you shouldn't see anything here because we don't have a product right now, right? So let's go ahead and grab our assets folder from Discord first, and then we're going to proceed. Okay, so I'm all set. I got my product. I got everything that I need. So go ahead and click on create product. And I'm also using ChatGPT just to speed up the process. So I'm going to copy a product name. Let's cancel this. I don't need that. And then I also have a description. So let me go ahead and copy a description. Just use the ones that are inside the starter kit or the boilerplate stuff, okay? The assets folder essentially. So once that's done, if you scroll down here, you will see product image. And if you're on desktop mode, it might be on the right side, okay? And you could either add a description, you could either add a product image or a product gallery. But I'm just going to make it simple for now just to show you how to do this. And I'll be using product image. So go ahead and click on set product image and let's upload that file. All right, so I just went ahead and dropped one of the images from the assets folder and go ahead and click on set product image. And then once you're done, scroll down here to where you see regular price and just set something on it for now. So I'm just going to make this $7.99, okay? Absolutely no remorse. And then we're gonna go into ChatGPT, or actually, sorry, you will get it in the assets folder. So copy the description for this specific product name, which is this one right here. Okay, so product name and a description for that product as well, and go ahead and publish. Okay, now, like I said, WooCommerce is amazing because it takes all of the heavy lifting of creating a very complex, system that handles useless things. Like you don't have to build all of this. You don't have to build a inventory tracking system. It's already done for you, right? So for example, you can go and look at WooCommerce orders and you can see how many orders your customers have placed. You can also track them, add tracking details. Everything is done for you, so you don't have to waste your time and you can go live today, make money right now, okay? And if you have a Next.js application, that's why using something like WordPress as a backend is so nice, because now you just have to change it in here and it changes across your store, right? Okay, cool. So now we already added a product. Let's go ahead and create a key so we can grab all of this information. So go ahead and click on WooCommerce, then click on Setting, then click on Advanced, click on REST API, and now we're going to have the ability to get a REST API key. Okay, so go ahead and click on create key. I'm not going to show you this key, but I'm going to show you how to put that into your environment folder first. So create an environment file, So create a .env file. And inside this file, I'm going to basically have the following keys. Now, this will also be there inside the Discord. So that way you don't have to type all of this stuff, right? So I'm going to paste this in here, which is the WordPress, the WooCommerce consumer and secret key. And then we also have Stripe stuff, right, to accept payments. So let's go ahead and bring that in. Now, the next thing is I'm going to go ahead and pause the screen and do this. So please make sure you create this key. It's going to ask you for a description for the key or like a name. Provide that. I would suggest call it products like this, okay, without any spaces or anything, just products. And then after that, you're going to get the keys, paste them in here. All right. And once you're done, go ahead and click on Advanced again and click on REST API. Same thing under the WooCommerce settings, right? Just to ensure that you see the word products right here. Okay. If you don't see this, it means it didn't create that REST API key. So make sure that key is created. And once you're done with this, then we can proceed to the other parts of building this application. All right, now the next thing we want to do is install Shadcn UI. So go ahead and open up the Shadcn UI website, click on installation, click on Next.js, copy this command right here, and then paste it, hit enter, and click on neutral. And that's going to create a components.json file for you. Next, you should also see a libs folder, and it looks like it set it up for us, so awesome. Then you want to copy this second command, paste it down here, but you want to remove the word button and hit enter. Next, click on A, click enter again, and that's going to speed up the process by installing all components for us, so we don't have to go back and forth essentially. And you should see the components folder right here. Great job. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is if you click on the components.json, you'll notice that the Tailwind CSS file does not exist, or not Tailwind CSS, sorry, it's the Tailwind config file. And I think the reason is because of how Shadcn does this with the app router. Not saying that the source router is the best option. It doesn't really matter. It honestly doesn't change anything. But I noticed that the file wasn't created here. So what you're going to do is create a new file, and you want to call this tailwind.config.typescript, and make sure it's the correct spelling, of course. And then once you're done with that, if you go to the Discord, you're going to find the asset file called tailwindconfig.typescript or .js. Just copy that and paste it in here, okay? And this is essentially going to help us export all of our colors, set up the Tailwind configuration for our application. Now, a very important thing is you'll notice we aren't passing that in here because it looks like Nextjs15 didn't do it for us. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy the location, the path of this, and we're going to paste it into our components JSON file. So go ahead and type the following. So we're going to say tailwind config.typescript, just like this, and it's going to find it for us in the root directory. Great job. Now let's go ahead and cancel everything from here. And let's also make sure we have our global CSS. Awesome. It looks like all the styles are placed in here as well, and they look like Nextjs colors. So this pretty much should be good to go. So now let's close this file and let's go into our layout.tsx. And the first thing we're going to do is set up the font like I mentioned. So let's go ahead and grab this specific font. So first thing is I'm going to remove this, and let's remove this from here as well. And the font is called DM__mono. Okay, so I made a spelling error, just like this. Let's copy that. And then down here, I'm going to say const dmmono equal to this, invoke it. And for the settings, we're going to pass the following. So we're going to say wait, actually not 700. I'm just going to set this to a string of 400. And subsets, you can set it to Latin like this. Okay, awesome. And make sure there is a comma at the end. And there we go. Now let's copy this. Let's go down here and let's remove everything from this class name. And we want to say dmmono.classname like this. Okay, and that should add our styling to this component. Next, you want to also put the suppressed hydration warning. So I'm going to pass that in here as well. And we should be good to continue now. Next, let's go up here and I'm just going to change this to easy clone. And for description, we just want to say fake easy website. This is just for learning purpose. Okay, awesome. And then let's go down in here and we're gonna hit enter. And now we can put our providers, our components, whatever we need for Nextjs or our application itself inside this component. So since this is a shorter video, I'm gonna have a lot of time to explain stuff, but I'm not gonna get into too much detail in the sense that I'm not gonna explain things that I expect you to already know. And if you want to learn more in depth on specific topics, I'm definitely going to refer other videos that I've created in the past. So the first one is a context, which is a provider that we're going to create for our application. Now, if you don't know what state management means, then I highly recommend you watch the video Plura, which is one of my favorite and my best courses completely for free on YouTube. And that will teach you how to create state management from scratch. And if you want to learn how to use a third-party library like Zoostand or Redux, there's a ton of other courses I've done completely for free on YouTube where you can learn. Okay, but for now, we are going to focus on just creating a cart provider so we can give some state management in our application. What is state management? Well, we're essentially creating a data layer around our application. So think about it as this being our app, and all we're doing is creating a data layer across the app so that individual components within the application, nested or outside, or basically in its own structure, can access this data layer, and then they can get access to the data from any nested structure. This way we don't have to pass them down as props into these components. I think this is a known topic, but I don't want to get too much in detail. But just in case you're wondering what we're doing, that's what we're building right now. But why do we have to build this? Well, in our application, we're going to need to maintain the state of our cart. That means how many items did we add to the cart, the quantity, the price point, including the subtotal. And this way we can use that at checkout. You can also control other states like close and open for the cart itself. And so you see how the state management is going to come in handy, right? Even if we navigate to a different page, we can essentially hold a state to render that state on the page. So that's what we're going to do first. So let's go ahead and build the cart provider. So first thing I'm going to say is cart provider, and we have to pass in the children components into this. So let's go ahead and do that as well. And I'm also going to say bun run dev and refresh the browser. All right, so while that's refreshing, let's go ahead and quickly complete the cart provider. So open up your folder structure and you want to create a folder in here. So I'm going to shrink all of this, and outside in the root folder, I'm going to create another folder called providers. And inside that, I'm going to create a file called cart context. You can also call this context, but typically you'd see it called providers, okay? And now inside this, I'm going to use tsrafce and just create a cart provider in here, which I can export. And I'm also going to import it from here. If you don't know how I imported this, I just used tsrafce, which is a kind of like a plugin you can install. It's called React Snippets, and that's going to help you do that. Let's make sure our browser is up and running. It looks like I'm on HTTPS. Sorry about that. And that's another topic that I covered in another video. So if you want to learn how to do local development but on HTTPS, you can take a look at one of my previous courses. I think I'll leave a link somewhere on the page, or I think it's actually called Fuzzy. It's the automation builder video, okay? We built a lot on this channel, so I totally lost track of it, but I think it's Fuzzy. That video should teach you how to do that. So inside this, first, we're going to create states, and these states are going to be passed down into the context provider, which will give that provider, which will give data to all of the other components, okay? So first state is the items itself inside the cart. So I'm going to say const items set items equal to use state, and let's invoke that. And the type here is going to be an array, of course. But what type of an array? Well, it's going to be a special type called cart item. Let's copy this type name, and we're going to say type up top here, or actually, let's use interface cart item. And this is going to have ID, which is going to be a string, name, which is going to be a string, price, what's this? Okay, there we go. Price, which is a number. We're going to have quantity, which is a number. And we're also going to have images, or yeah, images like this. And this is going to be an object, an array of objects. And we're going to have source, so src, which is going to be a string. Okay, this is all we need for now. We'll add more if we need in the future. And now let's copy this, paste it here, but this has to be an array of these. So let's go ahead and bring that in as well. Now the first thing is we see this error. The reason why we see this error is we are using a client hook, which is useState, which is only supposed to work on the client side inside this component. And there's no way to indicate that this component or this page is a client component. And so the way to do that is say use client up top. And now let's refresh this, and there we go. Now the next state is I'm going to have an open and set is open state, so I know if the cart is open or not. So I'm going to say const is open, set is open, equal to use state. And in here, I'm going to say false for the default value. Now inside our components, we also have props in here. So I'm going to grab the children, which is going to be react.react node, and we can destructure those from here, and then we can render it in here just like this. So now you can see our root page is being rendered out. Great job. Now after this, we're going to return our cart provider here, which is essentially the context provider. And so instead of a div, I'm going to remove this. So let's just remove this whole line. And I'm going to say cart context dot provider. Now, of course, we don't have this provider already, the context already. And so that's the next thing that we need to create. So what is a context? The context is essentially what gives us access to a provider that we can use to wrap our components with to give those components access to the value that is stored inside this provider, like such. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that context. So you want to scroll up here, and in order to create a context, you have to say create context. So we're going to say cart context equal create context from React. Let's invoke that. And for now, I'm just going to pass in undefined, and I'll tell you why you're not supposed to do this, but I'm just essentially showing you the fastest way to build this, right? We're not going to focus on good coding practices, but I'm just going to guide you along the way as well. So essentially, this context right here is going to have this value stored as the default value when it spins up. So the cart data is going to be, instead of, a specific type of data structure you want for your app, for now I'm just going to set it to undefined. But if you have something you want to render by default when the app starts, you will have to create const default value, and you would have to set that default value in here. But just for simplicity of this video, I'm going to put it to undefined. Now, this is also going to have a type, and the type here is cart context type. And so think about it this way. The data layer that you use to wrap your entire application will have a type. This way, in other parts in your application, you can get access to type intelligence that tells you what values, what data, or what methods do you have access to from the store, so you can reuse them inside your code, or get values, get data, use setters, manipulate the state, all that kind of stuff. And so in order to do this, we have to create a type here so it's easier to get that intelligence. So I'm going to say interface cart context type, and first we're going to have the item state, and the item state is going to be of this type, cart item, but an array of them. And then we're going to have another state called add item, and this is going to be an arrow function that returns void, but it's going to require the product. And for now, I'm just going to set it to any, but you might have an object with a specific type, so you can create a type for that as well. The next one is remove item, which is going to be another arrow function that returns void. And this ID, to give it more context, is product ID. Okay, and that's going to be a string. Next, we're going to have update quantity, which is going to be an array. It's an arrow function that gets the product ID, which is a string, and the quantity, which is a number, and it's a function that returns void. Next, we're going to have clear cart, which is void, is open, which is a Boolean, set is open, which is a setter to change this value, which is an arrow function that takes in a Boolean value and returns void, and the cart total. So we don't need on close. We're going to get cart total, which is going to be a number. And so now we can reuse this in here or set it to undefined. Okay, there we go. So now we can use this state inside this. You see it's already throwing some errors, right? So let's go ahead and grab that. So the first thing we have to do is I'm going to say value equal to, and we have the items. So I'm going to pass in the items, but it requires all the others as well, right? You see it requires the add item, remove item, and all this kind of stuff. And so the first thing we're going to do is create the add item value, which is the function, so we can pass that down in here, and then we can access that in other parts of our application. So I'm going to say const add item equal to use callback. We're going to invoke this, which is an arrow function, and this is going to take an empty dependency array. Now, why am I using use callback? I'm not going to get into too much details, but if this was just an arrow function, it's going to invoke every time. Well, use callback is going to cache the value as long as the dependency array never changes. And so that's why it's better to do it this way, okay? It's not required, but again, just nicer ways to improve the performance of your code. So next thing is, when we invoke the add items function, the first thing we want to do is we're going to be setting the items to something else, right? So let's invoke that first of all. And this is going to give us access to the previous items in here. And so I'm going to grab those as well. And inside the code, I'm going to do the following. So the first step is to get the existing item, because right here we're trying to add an item to the cart. But if the item already exists, then all we have to do is update the quantity. So what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to say const existing item is equal to previous items dot find for that item, where item.id is equal to the product.id. Now product.id comes from here. So let's grab it's product. So product is of type any, and let's bring that in right here. Okay, looks like something is wrong. Okay, because we have to return some data, right? So we're going to set this in here, and then after this, we're going to say if existing item, then we're going to return the previous items dot map, and I'm going to grab the item in here, and I'm going to return if the item.id is equal to the product.id like this, then I'm going to return the following. So I'm going to say question mark, or do something here, else do something here. For this section, I'm going to return a new object for that data with everything inside the item, but I'm going to set its quantity. Let me make sure I'm not making a spelling error here. So quantity, and I want to set that to item.quantity plus 1 because it already exists in the cart. If not, I'm going to return the item itself. Awesome. Now after this, hit enter, and by default, we're going to return everything inside previous items, but we're going to return a new object with everything inside the product, and quantity is going to be set to 1. Now down here, finally, we're going to set isOpen to true. And there we go. Awesome. Great job. So now we can copy this function and we can say add item like this and pass it down in here. And so our components can essentially get access to all of this stuff. So I see another error here, and the reason is because this is mentioned as though it is a function. So let's change this to an object. Okay, awesome. And the next one is the remove items function. So I want you to try to take this up as a challenge. Create a helper function called remove item. And what this does is when you pass in a product ID, it's going to look into the array and remove that product specifically that the user was trying to remove and set the new items to the one without that product. So pause this video and take it up as a challenge. If you don't know how to do it, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you got the right answer. If not, this is all you had to do. So you're going to say use callback. We're going to say product ID, and this is a string. We're going to set the items, and in here, we're going to say previous items, because you're going to grab that, but we're going to filter them out where the item.id is not equal to product ID. Okay? And now we can copy this and paste it in here. So if you did this, great job to you. Now the next one is the update quantity. So this is a little more challenging. So I'd like you to take this one up as a challenge as well. So create a helper function called update quantity that's essentially going to take in the product ID and the... Okay, we need to pass in a dependency array. And it's going to tell you to pass remove item. Do not do that. Okay, so I'm going to say set items, and in here we're going to get access to the previous items, and then we're going to say previous items dot map, and we're going to return new data here by saying previous items dot map. If item dot ID is equal to product ID, then we're going to return everything inside the item, but we're going to set the quantity that the user wants. If not, we'll just return the item itself. That's it. Awesome. So if you did this, great job. You are actually a developer. So you're probably here just looking to improve on your code or just looking to learn how to use WordPress as a backend. Okay. So the next thing now is we need to create the clear cart functionality. So this is very straightforward. So I'm going to do this as well. So this is going to be const clear cart equal to use callback like this. And we're going to set items to an empty array. And you can also set isOpen to false if you'd like, but I'm just going to keep it like this. Now let's copy this and let's pass the clear cart in here. Awesome. The next one is isOpen, which we already have a state for. So I'm going to copy isOpen and I'm going to paste isOpen in here. And finally, we need, two more things, which is set isOpen, which is going to be a callback, a setter function. And then finally, the cart total. Now to do this, we're going to need to copy this value, go up here, and we're going to say const cart total equal items.reduce. Okay, if you don't know what reduce is, you have a lot to learn in JavaScript, but that's fine, no worries. All we're going to do is reduce an array to a single value, and the starting value for that is going to be 0, and we're going to append to it. So we're going to say, give me access to total and the item. And what we're going to return is total, which is this essentially, right? 0. 0 is a value of total, plus item price. Why is it not showing? Item.price like this, and star item.quantity. So item.quantity. Okay, awesome. So that's going to give us the cart total. Let's copy that and paste it down here. And finally, we have to return the children items. So let's go ahead and say children just like this. Great job. So now you have created a provider that you can use in your application. But we're going to need one more thing. In order to use this, you will need to get access to the context. And so for that, I'm going to create a hook. So I'll go into my hooks folder and I'm going to create something called use cart.typescript. And in here, I'm going to export an arrow function or a regular function. So I'm going to say function like this. And this is called use cart hook. And I'm also going to need to change this to use client, even though I don't think I'm just going to do it just in case. And then down here, this is not going to need any params. But all we're going to return in here is first the context, which is use context. And we're going to invoke this, but we need to pass in the context from here. So let's go ahead and grab the cart context. So export, and then we're going to need to import this inside a use cart hook. So pass in the context itself, cart context from providers. Great job. And then now we're going to say if the context is equal to undefined, then we're going to return or actually throw new error like this. Okay. And we don't need to do else here. This is fine. So throw new error saying the use cart hook should be used inside the cart provider only. This is just for a developer experience. It's just standard procedure. So you're going to need to do that. And down here, let's scroll down. I see some errors. Okay, this is any and this is any error. Okay, that's fine. So there we go. Now we have the hook. We can use this cart provider as well. And inside your layout component in here, you should have no errors. Great job. Now, if you refresh the page, you should also see the landing page, which is page.tsx, which is the next thing that we're going to work on. So go into the page.tsx. I'm going to shrink everything from here, remove this just like this. And what seems to be the error? Okay, that's just because we're not returning anything. So I'm just going to return a div for now. And the next thing we need to do here is first, we're going to need to render the products. If you look at our designs, the root page is going to have all of the products. Okay. And so in order to do this, we're going to need to create a server action. So I'm going to say const products equal await. And because we're using await, this will have to be an async function. And I'm going to call this server action get products. Copy this name, go into your folder structure, just shrink everything right here, create a new folder and call it actions. And inside that, you want to create another server action file, and you want to call it products. So I'm going to say products.typescript. And then first thing is you need to set it to use server for it to become a server action file. And now we're going to need a library called WooCommerce REST TypeScript API. And this library is essentially going to help us use WooCommerce inside our Next.js application. Now, inside this course, I'm going to show you how to build the cart, build all the WooCommerce features pretty much from scratch to some extent using Stripe. But you can leverage this library in combination with other WooCommerce libraries to literally do all of the heavy lifting. That means you can reuse your components, reuse their cart, all that kind of stuff, so you don't have to waste any time. But in this course, at least I want to give you some value as to how to build that. And so I'm going to show you how to build your cart from scratch, how to do an add to cart feature. Just do something as simple as possible, nothing too complex, and you can add on top of it, okay? But what I'm going to do first is quit the terminal, and I'm going to say bun add WooCommerce REST-TypeScript-API. And the version number that I'm using is also going to be inside the Discord under the assets folder. So just make sure you use the same versions as well. Okay. So go ahead and hit enter, and that should install that library for us. Now I'm going to import WooCommerce REST API from WooCommerce like this. And now I'm going to create a client. So I'm going to say const WooCommerce equal to new WooCommerce API like this. And this is going to have an object where we can pass in all of the properties. So the first one is we need to pass in the URL. Now the URL is something you can get from here. So click on visit store like this, visit store, and that's going to take you to your store URL. Copy the URL and paste it in here. Okay. And this has to be a string, of course. So please put it in a string. Okay. The next one is the consumer key. And this consumer key comes from variables. So I'm going to say process.env.WooCommerce consumer key like this as string. And then the next one is for the consumer secret. So I'm going to bring that in as well. And then for version, we're going to set it to WooCommerce v3. Okay, so please type this in as well. And then once you're done with this, we can now create our get products function. So I'm going to say export const function or export const get products equal to an arrow function like this. And that's going to return, actually not this here, as we're going to say const products equal await WooCommerce like this. And because we're using await, I'm going to change this to an async arrow function. Dot get, we're going to invoke it, and we're going to pass in what we passed in here. So if you go into dashboard, you go into WooCommerce, settings, advanced, REST API, this word right here, right? So products like this. And then we're going to, I mean, you can set any stuff you want in here, like how much you want per page, the count, but we don't need any data for now. And then we're going to say return products.data. Great job. Now we can copy this, go in here, paste it, and import get products. And that's going to essentially get us all the products that we need for our application. Now let's go back to our landing page and let's refresh this. Let's make sure we do bun run dev and let's refresh the browser. Now, continuing, the first thing we're going to create is our product grid. So this is a grid structure that's essentially going to have everything in our application. So I'm going to say product grid like this, and I'm going to make it a closing component. And then this is going to take in the products as a prop. So let's go ahead and pass that in. Now you want to copy this name, and you're going to open up your folder structure. And inside your components folder, you're going to create another file, and you're going to call it productgrid.tsx. And then in here, I'm going to use the tsrafc snippet and rename it to product grid. Now let's go back and import this component. And now you shouldn't have any errors. Okay. So inside this component, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get access to the products. So I'm going to say product is going to be of type products. It's going to be of type any array. And let's bring that in right here as well. Okay. Now, inside this, we're going to first create a state to toggle our sidebar, right? Sorry, not our sidebar, guys. This right here. So when you click on this, you see we're toggling this, right? So I'm just going to create that to make it look nicer. So I'm going to say const toggle and set toggle like this. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to use uState and set it to false by default. And now let's go down here. And because we're using uState, let's change this to useClient. And then down here, I'm going to remove this and I'm going to set a class name of minimum height of screen and BG of white. And then inside this, I'm going to have the header, which is a navbar. So I'm going to create a header component with the following styles. Please pause and type the styles. And then we're going to have a div inside this to essentially hold this like a container. So I'm going to say container with the following styles as well. And in here, we're going to have a button. So I'm going to say button, and this is going to have a class name padding of 2. And then we're going to have an onClick inside this. And this onClick is going to be an arrow function that's essentially going to set toggle like this to the opposite of toggle. Looks like I have some other errors in here. What seems to be the issue? Okay, there we go. Now in here, I'm going to check if toggle is true. If so, I'll return something here or I'll return something else. Now for the if success block, I'm going to return an X component from Lucid React. And this is going to have a class name of height set to 6, width set to 6, and font set to bold. And if it's not true, then we're going to have a more vertical option like this, right? So you can toggle that through. So I'm going to say more vertical like this with the class name height 6 and width 6. And now you should see that right here. So if I click it, you see it's toggling on and off. Okay. And now after this, I'm going to have a span. And inside the span, I'm going to have a class name. And we're going to set this to SR only. And inside this, I'm going to say menu. So now when I click on it, actually, we're not going to see anything because we're using this. Let me just quickly search why I use this class. Okay, we don't need this. I think this was unnecessary. Let's remove this. Or why do we have, why did I put this here? So use SR only to hide an element visually without hiding it from the screen reader. Cool. Okay, fine. So I think that's why I mentioned it. That's totally fine. It's not very important. But we can have that just as a way to, I guess, give more info for this button, right? So right now, X and more vertical has no meaning. And so this is going to give the screen reader more meaning. That's why. Okay. So it's for screen reader only. Now, down here after this button, we're going to say toggle. If this is true, then we're going to return a div. So I'm going to say div like this, and I'm going to remove this menu, and I'm going to set the following class names. So go ahead and set the following styles. So pause the screen and please type this. And then inside this, we're going to essentially create a like an array that has all of these values so we can loop over them. Okay, so go ahead and open up your folder structure. Just go into libs, create another file, call it data.typescript. And in here, I'm just going to paste this from the Discord. So go to the Discord and grab the assets folder so you can essentially just copy paste these in here. Okay, it's just the pages with the slash routes. So the pages and the href essentially. And then in here, we can render those out. So I'm going to loop over this now, and I'm going to say navbar data dot map. And for each of them, we're going to get access to the item. But in here, we're going to return a link component from next link, and we're going to set the href to be the item.link. We're going to set the key to be the item.name, and not name, sorry, .index like this. And then we have the class name. So I'm just going to put some styles on this as well. So please go ahead, pause this and type the styling. And then inside this, I'm going to have the item's title. So I'm going to say item title. Why is it not giving me that? Item.title. Okay, there we go. Now, after this down here, so if you click on this now, you should see it. Okay, looks like something is wrong, guys. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so nothing was wrong. I don't know what was going on. I think it's just that I had to refresh the server. So now we're good to go. Now let's go ahead, shrink this so you can see clearly. So Command B, Command J. And after this down here, we're going to hit enter after the div. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Hit enter here, okay? And we're going to use a sheet component from UI sheet. So let's bring that in. This is going to have the open state and the is open set on that. Now, where do we get this from? This comes from our use cart hook. So go ahead and say const like this, and we're going to set this to use cart, and let's invoke this. And then from the use cart hook, we're going to destructure is open and set is open. Now let's go down here, and I'm going to set those values on the sheet component. So I'm going to say open equal to is open, and on open change is set is open. Next, the sheet is going to need a trigger, right? So the trigger is going to say your cart, essentially. So let's go ahead and say sheet trigger like this, and we're going to set this to as child. And in here, we're going to create a button element with text dash. Actually, let me copy this so I don't make unnecessary errors. Please pause and type the styling. And then inside this, we're going to have a span that says cart just like this. Then after this cart down here, we're going to say cart items. And where do we get the cart items from? Well, this also comes from our state, our use cart state, right? Our hook. So first, this is called items, but I'm going to rename it to cart items like this. And let's scroll down here. And now we can say cart items. And give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm supposed to reduce this. So I'm going to say dot length first, not reduce, guys, sorry. I'm supposed to check the length first and make sure it's greater than 0. And if it is greater than 0, then we're going to return a span like this. Oh, why is there so much on my screen? Okay, span like that. And this span is going to have the following styling. So I'm just going to copy this CSS code. And then inside the span, I'm going to essentially reduce the cart items to a total quantity, right? So I'm going to say cart items dot reduce, invoke that, and I'm going to say total. This is going to be total slash item, and this is going to be an arrow function. And let me see if I can grab that from the AI. Okay, there we go. So it gave it to me. So total plus item quantity, and we're going to put 0 down here. Okay, now you want to scroll down here after the trigger, and so now you see the word cart, right? So nice. Now after this, we're going to have the content that has to render. And so for content, I'm going to use a sheet content component. Let's bring that in from Nextjs15 UI. And then inside this, I'm also going to have some class names, but now we have to have the header component, which is very straightforward. Sheet header with sheet title saying your cart. Okay, and now if I click on it, you're going to see the cart show up on the page. Okay, nice, awesome. Now after this, after the header, we're going to essentially render out all of the cart items. So cart items dot length. If this is equal to 0, then we're going to do something in here, or we'll do something here. Now, if it is equal to 0, I'm going to render out a placeholder to just show that there's no items in the cart. So I'm going to have a styling, some class names for that as well. So please go ahead and type that out. And after this, what's this? Let's, okay, there we go. Whew, that was so annoying. Now, in here, I'm going to have a shopping cart icon. So I'm going to say shopping cart like this. And that's going to have some styling as well. So let's grab that as well. Okay, just like this. And then after that, we're going to have a paragraph that says your cart is empty. So if I click on it right now, I'm going to see your cart is empty. Okay, nice. And after this, I'm going to also scroll down after the shopping cart. Okay, so I see margin bottom of 4. And when I look at this, okay. So this should be fine. If I put something in here, what happens? Okay, you see there's no padding. Okay, we'll figure that out later. So now down here, I'm going to return a div like this. And this div is going to have the following class name. It's just a container. And if you're wondering what we're building in here, this is going to look somewhat like this. Okay, so we're going to have list items to render out all of the cart items. So we'll have an image, its quantity, and its name and the price. So let's go ahead and do that. And so inside this, we're going to have another div to kind of contain all of this. And so we're going to say div with the following class names. And then we're going to have an unordered list to render out those items. And this is going to have space y of 6. And inside this, I'm going to say cart items.map for the item. And we're going to essentially render out a list item with a key. Let me go to this with a key like this. Okay. And then I see an error here. Let's render this out the right way. What's going on? So we have 2 brackets. Okay, let me fix this, guys. Okay, there we go. It was just a bracket problem. So I'm going to say list item with the following key, and I'm going to set the class name to the following as well. Okay, and now inside this, I'm going to create a div, and this div is going to have the following class names, and this is going to hold our essentially the images, the image itself. And so that's why we're going to have the overflow hidden on this. And we're going to use the next image right here, just like this image, and import it from next image. And then first, the source is going to be source item dot like this items dot images at 0.source / placeholder.svg. Okay. And then after that, I'm going to have the alt tags. I'm going to say alt. I'm going to have width set to 96 and height set to 96 as well. And the class is going to be heightful, widthful object, not cover object, contain. So let's say contain and padding of 2. Okay. And after this, we're going to have the price at the bottom here. Okay. Now after this div, hit enter. We're going to create another div, and this is going to have flex1 and flex column like this. And inside this div, we're going to have another div that's essentially going to hold the item and the price value. So I'm going to say div with the following class name, h3 for item name, and the paragraph for the item price. Now, of course, you're not going to see any data in here because we can't click on any of the grids because we haven't built them yet. What we're building right now is just the cart. But once we have the items in here, I'm pretty sure you can just look at it. It's a very simple structure. You have image, you have name, and price, right? So just keep that in mind. We're building something that looks similar to this. Now, after this, we're going to hit enter after this div. Actually, this one, not this, right here. And I'm going to create another div, and this is going to have flex items center and margin top of 2. And inside this div, I'm going to create a button, and this button is going to help us update the quantity by reducing it by 1 and also increasing it by 1. So that we're essentially having a way for the customer to add more quantity. So first I'm going to have class name, and the following styles are going to be added. So just give me 1 second, just like this, rounded and border with padding of 1. And I'm also going to have the update quantity, and this comes from our hook. So let's go up top and let's bring that in right here. So update quantity, and I'm going to scroll down here. And now inside my button component, I can essentially use this. So I'm going to say update quantity, on click equal to an arrow function that says update quantity, and it passes in the item ID and the item quantity -1. Okay, and looks like it did this twice. So let's remove that. There we go. Nice. Now inside the button, we're going to need to have a minus icon, and this is going to have class name height of 4 and width of 4. Okay, awesome. Now after this, I have to show the quantity itself, right? So I'm going to create a span with the class name set to the following styles. And inside the span, I'm going to say item quantity just like this. Then I'm going to copy this button up here. Actually, I made a small error, guys. So this span has to be after the button. And yes, like I said, copy the button, and we're going to paste it after this, but we're going to change this from -1 to +1. And for this here, I'm going to change this to plus icon, and we should be all set. Okay, awesome. And then after that, we're going to have another button so we can remove this from the cart. So take this up as a challenge. I showed you how to build every single thing so far that helps you remove the quantity, increment the quantity and remove one. But we also want to have a button that invokes the remove from cart function from our hook and removes the item from the cart. So create a button down here right after this button and give it the ability to remove that item from our cart. All the best. Okay, awesome. Hopefully you got it. If not, this is how you do it. Very straightforward. You got to have a button, and we're going to use the remove from cart, which is essentially the remove cart, but just renamed. So you want to scroll up top. It's called remove items, sorry. So remove items, but we're going to rename it to remove from cart. Okay. And then down here, we're going to pass in the item ID, and we're going to also have the following class name on this. And then we're going to have an X button and the word remove next to it, so we know that we can remove the element by clicking that button, and that's pretty much we're all set for this. Now down here, you're going to find a curly bracket, after that UL, after that div, hit enter, and then create the following div, and then we're going to give it the following styles. Inside this, we're going to essentially render out the subtotal and the cart, something like this, right? The cart total. So I'm going to create another div to kind of hold that like a container, and then use justify between to put this on the left and this on the right. So I'm going to create the container, justify between, and the following styles. And then I'm going to say subtotal and cart total in a paragraph. And now let's also go ahead and grab the cart total from our hook. So right up here, I'm going to say cart total. And now I can render it down right here. Also, I see these errors here. And that's because, yes, we're not looping over products yet to create the grid. That's the reason why. So let's take a look at our cart, make sure we're almost done. Okay, and right here, after this div, hit enter, and you're going to create a component called checkout, which is work in progress. So go ahead and say work in progress like this. Okay, we'll get to this in just a second. Now let's go ahead and test this functionality, and for that, we're going to need to create the product grid. So after the header, hit enter. You're going to create a main tag, and you're going to set the following class names on this main tag. And then inside that, you're going to have a div that has the grid layout as follows. So from mobile devices, it's going to be 1. So that means only 1 column. From small devices, it's going to be 2. And from medium devices, 3. And everything above the large device, it's going to be 4 only. Okay. And everything is also capped inside a container, so it's not going to expand further. Next, we're going to have gap of 40 between those, so it kind of looks similar to this. Now, inside this, we're going to loop over our products. So I'm going to say products.map, and we're going to get the product itself and the index, and this is going to return a link component. And inside here, I'm going to pass in the href, which is essentially going to be a string. So we're going to use backticks /product, and we're going to pass in the product ID. And then after this, we're going to have a key I'm going to just set it to index for now, and then some class names on this link as well. And now if you put something in here, you'll see it's returning one element, right? That's because we have one product. Now inside this div, I'm going to create a div inside the link, and I'm going to create another div, and I'm going to give it the following styles because this is going to hold our image, right? So I'm going to say div like this, and with the following class names. And then inside here, I'm going to create an image component from next image. And this image component is going to have the source attribute. So I'm going to say source is equal to, and this is going to be what we're getting from this product. So I'm going to say product.images at 0.source. And then I'm going to say placeholder.svg. Now you're going to see this error. And the reason is because we don't have a config, next config.typescript option here that allows this property to show. Okay, that allows this domain to essentially show. So it's going to show error for us. Okay, and so we have to essentially give it access so that we can access the image. So this is actually this is not the error that I expected. This is because we don't have height and width. So first let's set that so I can show you what that error looks like. So I'm going to say alt width and height, just like this, alt width height, and now you'll see that error. Okay, there we go. And so we need to essentially assign this inside our code base, inside our next config file. So this domain or this host name is essentially verified to render out images inside our application. And so before I do that, I'm also going to give this image a class name by setting width full, height full, and object contain. And now let's go ahead and fix this error. All right, so remember that error I was talking about, right? The reason why we're seeing that error is because we need to configure that endpoint in here. Now, you might have a next config.mjs file, okay? And if you have that, it should be okay. You don't really need to do anything crazy, but you will also find that version inside the Discord, inside the assets file, okay? If you have a .ts file, all you have to do is copy the configuration from that file and paste it in here, okay? So this is all you have to type on this page, which is the next config.typescript, and then make sure you quit your terminal and you spin up the terminal again, and that should solve this problem for you. Okay, that means that error will be removed permanently. So it's just that they want you to verify the domain in here, but I think if you add this and I guess these experimental hooks, I think it removes that stuff. Okay, so now let's go back to our code right here, and after the image, let's make sure we also have the price and the name. So this is the overlay that we need to create. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a div like this with the following styles. And inside that, I'm going to create another div with the following styles as well. And then I'm going to have the product name and the product price. And so this is going to use justify between to be left side and right side. There you go, just like that. So this is what it looks like on mobile, and this is what it looks like on desktop. Right? Looks awesome. So now let's quit this. Let's click on cart. Now we don't have anything in here. And now the way we're going to add something to cart is let's go into our Figma file. And so when you click on this, it's going to take you in here. And when you click on one of these, just for simplicity's sake, we can use this as a way to add the number of quantity, okay? But you might want to use this as a gallery, and that's totally fine. That just makes more sense, right? So if you're using a gallery image inside WordPress, you can render out the gallery image right in here. So this is super, super powerful. It's like a free CMS tool, right? So let's go in here. And now I'm going to close this page. Let me also check and make sure all errors are solved. Okay, it's just this, and you can actually do @TypeScript ignore, or maybe you can't do it in here. Maybe do it up here. Okay, never mind. So I'm going to close this file. And now that we're done with this file, when we click on this, it's going to take us to /product ID, but we're going to see a 404. And the reason is because we don't have that page set up. So create a product page like this, and you want to hit enter. And inside that, you want to create a dynamic route called ID, and inside that, a page.tsx. Why is it not letting me create? There we go, page.tsx. And now inside this component, I'm going to render out the product page like this, so tsrafce, and just change the titles, okay? Now this is going to give us access to params, so let's grab that. And this is going to give us the ID, which is going to be a string. And then down here, I can essentially grab params and I can also destructure it to grab the ID. Now I can print the ID in here, so I can say ID, and I should see 61. Awesome. Now, first thing I want to do is get the info of the product. That's how we can render the product information, right? This is the product details page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another arrow function here, another server action called get product. So product equal await. Let's change this to async. And I'm going to say get product, and I'm going to pass in the ID. And this is get product, a new server action. So copy this, open up your folder structure, go into products.typescript, and at the bottom, I'm going to say export const get product is equal to an async function. And this async function is going to need not slug, I'm just going to call it ID. And then in here, we're going to say const product equal WooCommerce.get. And instead of this part, I'm actually going to remove this because there's a simpler way to do this. I'm going to pass in an object and say parse int like this, and I'm going to pass in the ID in here, okay? And then finally, I'm going to return the product data. Now you can do a bunch of error handling if you'd like, but just for simplicity's sake, to speed up the process, I'm just going to do it this way. So now I have the ID and the details of the product as well. And so now we can render that product on the page. So let's go in here. And inside this, the first thing we're going to have is a div. So let's remove this here. And I'm going to say div as follows with min height screen. And then inside this, I'm going to have a container. So that's going to be div container with margin x of auto, px of 4, and py of 6. And now I'm going to have a back button up top. So I'm going to say link, which comes from next link. So link, next link like this. And href is going to be backslash like this. And then after that, I'm going to have some styling on that as well. So let's go ahead and pass that in. And then inside this link, I'm just going to say back. Okay, there we go. So if you click that, it's going to take us back to the root page. Now in here, after this link, I am going to actually, let's just scroll down after this link and create another div. And this div is going to have the following class names. So let's go ahead and paste that in here. And inside this div, I'm going to essentially render out the product image. So this is going to use grid. And so I'm going to create two columns here. So I'm going to say large column, span 2, flex column, and gap of 6. And inside this, I'm going to render out all the product images, okay? So I'm going to say, but for now, I'm just going to use one image, but you could use multiple, and that's why I have this structure here, right? But our main reason why we need this grid structure here is that we're going to essentially put this on the right side, and this will stick to the right side of the page, right? And when you scroll down, this is going to essentially only scroll the left side. Now, one more thing is on mobile devices, we want this to be at the bottom, and that's why we're using grid structure because it's so much easier to move things around. So in here, I'm going to say products. This should be product, not products. Product.image, images at 0.source. If this exists, then we're going to render out a div like this. Okay. And inside this div, I'm going to give it the following class names. So let's go ahead and do that as well. And inside this, I'm going to render out that image component from next image. Okay. And that's going to need the source and the alt tag. So let's say source and alt. And then I need width and height, which is going to be 600. And then after that, I'm going to put a class name on it, just like this. And I'm going to set the property called priority on it. Okay. And then after that, down here, you're going to hit enter after these curly brackets. And now we can create the product details. Okay. So first thing is create a div. And this div is going to be flex column and gap of 4. And inside this div, I'm going to have another div that's going to contain the product name, the product quantity, and the product price. So go ahead and create a div like this with the following class names. And inside that, an H1, which is going to have text to XL, font bold, and I'm going to say product name. And then after that, I'm going to create another component called product quantity. Okay. And let's just put this under a work in progress flag. So I'm going to say work in progress like this. Okay. And then after that, I'm going to create another div. I'm going to say class name. It will not give me class name. Okay, there we go. Text to XL, font dash bold. And in here, I'm going to say $, outside this, product.price. Okay. There we go. Great job. And then after this div down here, we're going to essentially render out the description that we have that is coming back from the backend. Okay. Now keep this in mind. I do not recommend you do this in production. Please do not do this way. Okay. You have to essentially, what we're doing here is we're rendering out the data coming from the description, which is actually not a paragraph, not text. It is HTML. Okay, and so you should never set the HTML content of an element directly, but I'm just doing it just for simplicity's sake. But what I would recommend you do is you have to put some security stuff on that. Okay, you have to verify to ensure that the HTML is secure and it's safe to consume, and only then should you append this. Or even simpler, you can use the description, short description page or short description option to just add text only in there. Okay, so I'm going to do this only for now. I'm warning you once more, please do not do this error. Okay, do not do this mistake. So text gray 700, and I'm going to set, it's literally called dangerously set inner HTML. Okay, and so we're going to set that to an object, and we're going to say underscore HTML. And remember, anything with underscore is not supposed to be used, right? And so that's why it's done this way. And so you're going to say underscore HTML like this, product.description. And now you can see everything is going to render down in here. Okay, great job. So let's remove this and just make this a closed div like this. Okay, awesome. And then let's scroll up here and let's do the product quantity first because we want to see the cart and make sure it's working. So copy this component name and you're going to go into your components folder, create another folder, call it product. And I'm going to say product quantity.tsx and let's use tsrife and render out the component's name. Next, this prop is going to have product, which is of type any. And let's go ahead and destructure that value in here. And now down in here, all we're going to do is I'm just going to use an array of 10 elements and just loop over them and render out a number. Okay, so remove this in here and we're going to give this the following class names. So I'm going to say class name like this. Okay, and inside this, I'm going to say ... array, invoke it, and we're going to pass in 10. And then you want to say .map. And for each of these, you're going to get an arrow function, right? So for each of these, we're going to grab the index as well. And in here, I'm going to say span. And this span is going to first have the key. So let's state the key and then some class names as well. But before that, let's just render out the element. And now let's go back and quickly import the product quantity component. So I'm going to say product quantity. And I need to pass in the product itself. So product equal product like this. And now you can see, I will see those elements in here, right? Okay, now let's go back into product quantity. And then after this, the class name is going to be as follows. So I'm going to hit enter inside the span. And I'm going to say class name, which is going to check the product quantity. And this comes from a value that we're going to create up here. But before that, we need all of this from our used cart store, our used cart hook. So because we've done this a million times, I'm just going to paste the used cart hook in here and first change this to a used client component. And now I'm just going to import the things that I need. Okay. And so in here, to create the current product quantity, I'm going to create a value. So const equal current product quantity equal to cart items dot find. And we're going to use an arrow function in here. And I'm going to say, give me the item itself. But if the item.id is equal to the product.id, if this is true, then not if this is true, sorry. After this, we're going to get the quantity if this exists. So if this exists, get quantity for me. If not, set it to 0. Okay. And so now we can render that out in here. Another way you can do this is actually to optimize it even more. You can use one of the, not callback, I think there's a use memo, right? Use memo will store this value and pretty much kind of cache the value. And then you can pass in the cart items as a dependency array just to make sure this doesn't fire on every single loop. But even then, this is not a very complex operation. But if you're doing a very complex operation, then make sure you put that in a use memo hook. Okay. So down here, finally, we're going to need an onClick. And the onClick is going to essentially handle the updating of our state to add something to the cart. Okay. So I'm going to say const handle product equal to an arrow function. And let's copy this. And down here, I'm going to say onClick equal to an arrow function that takes in handle product. And we're going to say I plus 1. Okay. I plus 1. Why is it throwing an error? Okay, that's because I'm not expecting it in here. So I'm going to say quantity is going to be a number. Okay. Awesome. And then in here, first, I'm going to find the product from our cart items. So dot find, and I'm going to say item like this, and find it if the item.id is equal to the product.id. And the reason is because if we found the product, I'm just going to update its quantity. If not, I'm going to add it to the cart as a new product. So I'm going to say if find product, update quantity, else add product, and I'm going to pass in the product ID in here. Damn, AI is so awesome, man. That just did it for me in a few seconds. That's cool. So now down here, I also do not like this text being so huge. Let's remove this. And let's see if that changes anything. Okay, padding X of 2. All right, much better. So if you click on this, let's say you clicked on 1, right? Let's refresh the page and do that once more. So we want to check here if it's equal to I plus 1. This looks correct to me. So if I click on this now, let's just look at cart. Something looks off. Okay, there we go. So something was off actually. Huh. Cannot read properties of undefined, reading 0. Okay, so this is, all right, just give me 1 second, guys. All right, guys, so I found the issue here. The reason why we were seeing that error was because we weren't writing the function to handle the click correctly. So inside product quantity right here, we were adding the wrong property to the cart. So instead of sending the product itself, we were sending product.id. And I figured that out because when I clicked on the element right here, when I clicked on this, it wasn't highlighting the number of quantity itself. It was just turning off. And so that means something was wrong there. And so I clicked on it and I saw, okay, so this add to cart requires a product itself. So that was the error. And that's why we were seeing the undefined cannot read properties of undefined error inside this helper function. Okay, so all you had to do was change that part, and that should solve that error. And I also changed some styling, so let's go ahead and look at that. So inside the product grid component down here, I changed the cart items UL div right here. This div, I changed it from padding bottom or padding top or something, or padding Y, I'm not sure. I changed it to padding 6, and at the bottom as well, I changed this one to padding 6 as well. Okay, so just go ahead and do that and you should be all set. So let's just test it out real quick. So as you can see, we have the space for the cart. We'll put that there in just a second. But if I click on any of the elements right now, if I click on number 2, it highlights number 2. And if I go back to click on my cart, I see number 2 in here. And if I add more, down here, we should see it multiply. Awesome, great job. And just to make sure this is also working, if I click on X button, it removes it from the cart. And great job so far. Now let's go ahead and proceed. So I'm just going to shrink this. And now let's go into our component itself because we have to render out the other cart section. And then we should be good to go. Okay, so let's go in here. And after this component, after these 2 divs, I'm going to hit enter, create another div, give it a class name of large column -span -1. And in here, I'm going to essentially create another component called product action. Okay, so go ahead and say the following as well. And I'm going to copy this name here, open up my folder structure, and inside my products folder in components, I'm going to create a .tsx file with that name and use the snippet to rename this component as well. And then let's go back and quickly import the product action component. Now inside here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this, and it's going to show at the bottom here, right? So I'm going to create a div. And this div is going to have the following class names. So let me go ahead and set that on this. Okay. And it's going to create this gray space in here. And if you look at it on desktop, it's going to stick up here when you scroll. Okay. And now inside this div, create another div in here. Let's go ahead and say div. And inside this, we're going to have the cart header first. Okay. And this is going to look very similar to something like this again. Okay. So nothing too complex or too different from what we built before. So just go ahead, hit enter and create another div in here with the following class names. And this is going to have a 3-grid column structure. Okay. And then after that, we're going to have product as the first element, Q as a quantity, and price right here. Okay. Next, after this, hit enter. And now we're going to have the cart items. So I'm just going to create this tag here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to loop over the cart items. And these cart items are going to come from our use cart hook. So since we've done this already, I'm just going to paste this in here. Import use cart, go up top, and change this to use client component. And now I can use all of the things that I get from my use cart hook in here. So I'm going to say cart items.map, and we're going to get each item here. So what seems to be the issue right here? Let's see. So let's get this up in one line. Okay. And for the cart item, I'm going to essentially return a div like this. And inside this div, let's give it a key and set that key to the item.id. And then it's going to have a class name for some styles. So let's go ahead and give it some styles as well. And inside this div, I'm going to have the name, quantity, and price for this item. So if you see right here, nothing's in here right now. But if I add something to cart, you're going to see the quantity show right here. So if I change it to 2, 3, 4, 10, it's going to reflect accordingly. Okay, let's shrink this now. And then after this div, I'm going to hit enter after this one, all the way at the, actually not that one. So we have this bracket, we have this curly bracket here, and another div. Okay, hit enter after this. And this is the subtotal section. Okay, so in here, I'm going to create another div, give it margin top of auto. And inside this, I'm going to essentially create another div that's going to have the following class names. So go ahead and type these class names out. And I'm going to show subtotal. So subtotal. And I'm going to show the cart total. That's pretty much it. So subtotal and cart total. Something changed. Where is this? Okay, subtotal and cart total right at the bottom here. Now it looks like something is off. Let me see what's going on, guys. Okay. So I made some errors here, so I'm just going to change this to flex, item center, justify between, and that should fix that error. And then after this div, I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to use another component called checkout, which is a component we're going to need to essentially check out, get a payment form essentially. Okay, so let's go ahead and build that out. So copy the checkout component title. You want to open up your folder structure, and inside components, I'm going to create a checkout component.tsx and return snippets right here and change the title. And this component is going to have a button down here. So let's create a div, set the class names to margin top of 6, grid, and gap of 4. And then down in here, I'm going to have a button component from UI button. And this button is going to have size large, class name width full. And then I'm going to create a disabled prop that's essentially going to turn off the button when the user is not going to have the ability to buy this product or checkout right now. And that is only if we are loading the process. That means if we are making the payment right now or checking out. And if of course, there's items length is 0, so there's nothing in the cart. So to do that, I'm going to create a state. Actually, not create a state. I'm going to extract the state from use cart hook, and let's change this to use client. And I'm going to get the items array right here. And then I'm also going to create another state called loading and set loading. And this is used for Stripe when the user is trying to check out, right? So let's grab that and set it to false by default. And then down here, I'm going to say disabled, not directory. I don't know why I did that. So disabled, loading, and items or if items.length is equal to 0, then we'll disable the button, okay? And now let's go back and quickly import this checkout component right here. Okay, there we go. And you should see that at the bottom. Now we also have to provide some text in here. So I'm going to say if it is loading, Then I'm going to say processing. If not, I'm going to say checkout just like this. There we go. And now if I scroll, refresh, and scroll to the bottom, I should see checkout, but it's going to be disabled. Okay. If I add a product to my cart, then I will see the number shows and I can check out. But if I click on it, of course, nothing's going to happen right now. So let's go ahead and set that up. So go ahead and hit enter and say on click equal to on checkout, which is a helper function. And up here, I'm going to say const on checkout equal to an arrow function. And this arrow function is essentially going to load Stripe, load the checkout for Stripe checkout, and it's going to help the customer essentially pay. And in order to do this, we're going to need a Stripe package called Stripe.js. Okay, so let's go ahead, quit the terminal, refresh the browser. I'm going to say bun add @stripe-stripe.js, and please make sure to add the right version number, and you can find that from the package JSON inside the Discord channel. Okay, so in here, first thing I need to do is import Stripe, load Stripe from Stripe.js, just like this. And now down right here, I'm going to say const Stripe promise equal to load Stripe. We're going to invoke that, and we're going to pass in the process.environment variable called next Stripe publishable key. Okay, and this is not an object. This is just a parameter. So let's go ahead and pass that in and make sure you put the exclamation points. Now, how do you get this value? And that's exactly what we're going to do now. So make sure you log into Stripe and create an account if you haven't already, and then go into your dashboard and you should see the test mode up here. If you don't see test mode, click on settings and toggle test mode on. Now, Stripe is a monster of a tool. Okay, there's so many things that you can do with Stripe, and it's very, very complex. It has, I mean, quite frankly speaking, I have spent hours, months of my time just learning how to incorporate Stripe into our applications, right? And so what I did was I went kind of like to a next step to create a very short quick link guide for you that you can grab from the Web Prodigy store. So just go to Web Prodigy store and you will find a Stripe quick link guide that has links so that you don't have to read the documentation. And if you want to just create a Stripe subscription, you just click here and it's going to take you exactly to that documentation page. Because like I said, Stripe is a monster of a tool. There's so many different type of documentation, and it's just super affordable. There's no crazy price point or anything. We're just looking to help you guys out, right? So I just created this, and hopefully it helps you kind of navigate Stripe. But if not, I'm also going to show you how to look through this in order to find all of your development keys, okay? So the first thing you need is the public Stripe publishable key, which you should get inside the API key, but you're not going to find it in here, and that's why it's a little confusing. So go to search, and you have to look up API keys like this, and you might see something like this. If you see this page, click on API keys, and you're going to get all of the keys you need. So go ahead, copy these keys and paste it inside your environment variables, and then once you're done, we will proceed. Okay, awesome. I finished pasting the variables. Hopefully you did as well. If not, please just copy and paste it right now. Okay, so the next thing is in here, I'm going to create the onCheckout function. And so the first one is to create a checkout session. Okay, so I'm going to say const response equal await fetch, and I'm going to use \API/checkout, which is going to be another route we have to create. And then the next thing is I'm going to create an object in here so we can pass in the properties. So the method here is going to be post. For headers, I'm going to say content type application JSON. And for the body, we're going to send in JSON.stringify, and we're going to pass in all of the items in here. Okay. Then after this is done, we're going to create a session. So I'm going to say const session ID is, we're going to destructure the session that comes back from this. So I'm going to say await response.json, and we're going to invoke this. And then when that comes back down here, first, let me just change this to an async component. And then down here, I'm going to say const stripe equal to await stripe promise. And then after this, I'm going to check if there's any errors. So I'm going to say error equal to await stripe dot like this, stripe.redirect to checkout. We're going to invoke that and pass in the session ID. And then after that, if there was any errors, let's go ahead and see once more. Okay, it's not giving me type intelligence. So I'm going to say error. Then in here, we're going to throw new error error.message. And then if not, actually, this is fine. So down here, I'm going to have a catch statement. Do we even have a try catch? Okay, it looks like I didn't create the try catch. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink all of this. Where did that go? Okay, shrink the on checkout, or sorry, the response right here. I'm going to copy all of this, and I'm going to create a try catch. So try catch block, and inside here, I'm just going to paste this. And then for the error, I'm going to console log the error. So error like this. And then finally, I'm going to do the following. So I'm going to set loading to false. And don't forget, up here, we also have to set loading to true. Okay? All right, that's pretty much it. So if you go back here and let's say bun run dev or bun run dev, hit enter, and let's refresh this page. Okay, and now I'm just going to add one to cart. But if I click on this, nothing's going to happen, of course, but I want to show you that it's actually processing this, okay? We're going to get no error here, actually a 404, or we're not going to get anything. And so we have to go ahead and set, that endpoint, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So I also see something else in here, which is unexpected error is not a valid JSON object. Let me see what's that error. Okay. First, let's go ahead and set up the endpoint so we can debug easily. So I'm going to shrink everything. Inside app, I'm going to create an API folder. And inside that, I'm going to create a checkout route, just like I mentioned in here, checkout. And inside that, a route.typescript. Now inside this, I'm going to create a post request. So I'm going to say export async arrow function. And I'm going to say post, actually not arrow function, guys. Sorry about that. It has to be an actual function. So export async function. And I'm going to change this to post. And in here, we're going to get request. So let's change this to request. And for type is going to be request like this. And in here, first, I'm going to create a try catch. Okay. And then down here, I'm going to extract the items. So I'm going to say items from the body. So await request.json. And let's invoke that. And now we have these items in here. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to loop over each item and I'm going to create a price with a quantity. So we can enter these inside the line items property inside the Stripe body. Okay, so I'm going to say const line items equal items dot map, which gives us an array in here. And I'm going to get the item, which is going to be of type any. And then in here, I'm going to return an object with price underscore data. So sorry, I made a spelling error there. Okay, it's price underscore data. And I'm going to first put currency as USD. The product data is going to be the item, is going to be an object with name, item name, images, item.image. And then I'm going to have a unit amount. Okay, and so this is going to be item price times 100 because Stripe expects everything in cents. And then after this, I'm going to have the quantity. So the quantity is going to be item.quantity in here. Now, after this, this is going to be an array of all of these values, right? So let me just confirm. Okay, there we go. And down here, I'm going to create a session. So equal wait, and this is going to be Stripe, but we don't have this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit enter for this right now. And okay, like this. And let's go ahead and create this Stripe client right here. So I'm going to say export Stripe equal new Stripe. And this Stripe comes from another package called Stripe. So open up your terminal. I'm going to quit the terminal, refresh in here. And I'm going to say bun add Stripe and hit enter. And then up top in here, I'm going to essentially import Stripe from Stripe, just like this. Okay, awesome. And now we can use that in here. So I'm going to say export const Stripe equal new Stripe. And this is going to need our Stripe secret key first. So I'm going to pass that in as a first parameter and then first argument. And then after that, I'm going to have an object and I'm going to set the API version to be the following. So please put the exact same version. This is the latest API version. Okay. Now let's scroll down here for the session. And now you see the session here is going to be payment method types, we're going to put card. Line items is going to be all the line items from here. Mode is payment, but the success URL is going to be slightly different. So I'm going to remove this from here. And I'm going to say process.env public site URL. Okay, so let's go ahead and say the following just like this. But we're going to say slash success question mark. Something looks wrong. Okay, it's after this, guys. So slash success question mark session ID equal to checkout session ID like this. And then the cancellation URL is going to be the same as this one right here, which is the process.env next public site URL. Okay. Then we're going to respond back with next response, and I'm going to invoke .json, and I'm going to pass in the session ID as the session.id. Okay. And if there was an error, I'm going to console.log the error on the server, and I'm also going to return next response, and I'm going to say .json error creating checkout session and status of 500. Now let's go ahead and open up our terminal, say bun run dev, and let's refresh our browser. All right, now is the moment of truth. If everything looks good and Stripe is set up correctly, we should not get that error, right? Because the only reason why we're getting that error is because we're not getting any response back from here. So now this should definitely 100% sort out this error for us. So I'm going to click on number 1 to add one product of this. And when I hit continue, there we go. Now we see the checkout page. Great job. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to search for my work in progress flags, and I'm also going to bring in the checkout component inside the product grid component page. Okay, so let's bring in this component in here, and let's refresh this. So let's just take a look at the cart. So let's add something to the cart. All right, there we go. Great job. Now I want you to take this up as a challenge. Here is your task. You need to create a buy now button. So this is something you'll see in Amazon. They do this a lot, which is instead of giving the user the ability to add it to the cart and then have them buy the product, instead we should have a button where the user can directly buy the product itself. Okay, so if I want this, I can just click on buy now instead of checkout, and that should instantly fire off Stripe. That should send an API request, and it should also send the user to that specific checkout page. Okay, so just for now, I'm going to give this a shot using the cart. So let's go back here. Inside our cart, I'm going to add about $2,300 worth of flip-flops, slides, whatever, and then click on checkout. And awesome, we see the exact same amount and we see the quantity as well. And now let's go ahead and put in some fake credit card information. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click on checkout, and this should work as expected. Awesome. Now it is sending us back to the success route, so that's another challenge for you. So you're going to need to create a route called success, okay? And this route should basically have a thank you page that will show up when the user is done checking out, just showing them that they have succeeded, making the payment went through, and maybe you can show some product, details on the page as well. All right, great job so far. Now let's move on to the more important part of our application, which is helping it scale to millions and millions of users, and at the same time getting a reliable hosting that is affordable, and how we can take this to the next level. All right, so now that we have our e-commerce store ready to go, this is the most important part, which is making this production grade so we can host it the right way. Now, this is the most important step because we have to make it enterprise grade, because we want our application to expand and scale to millions of concurrent users on the application or on your e-commerce store. And let's be honest, when it comes to hosting, there are hundreds of different hosting providers. It is very complicated and annoying to analyze each and every single one of them to see, which is the best fit. And so hopefully this video can show you exactly what you need to consider, what you need to look for when you're getting hosting. You are either an e-commerce business owner, or you have an e-commerce store, right? Or more importantly, I think most of you guys are developers, right? So you're probably a developer, and you probably have clients that are looking for scalable, solutions that can grow with them in the future, or maybe something that is high traffic, right? So maybe a learning management system or blog posts, that kind of stuff. And that's probably why you're looking for something like this. And hopefully I help answer all those questions in here. So when it comes to hosting, the first thing you want to look for in hosting is speed. If your hosting provider does not give you access to plugins and light speed plugins, etc., then it's going to be a pain to deal with, and you're going to need to do it all manually. And I would honestly not suggest you do that. So make sure that your hosting provider is has a good word out there when it comes to speed and deliverability for millions of users. So if your hosting provider is using a combination of some cutting edge technologies like Lightspeed Enterprise, then I think it's a good way to consider them. Okay, so I'm going to add this in here as well. Next is scalability. I think this goes without saying. If you're building something for your clients, you're building a site for your client and they need something that's high traffic, then your hosting provider should give you the ability to scale to millions of users. And usually if it's just a static website hosting service, then you're probably not going to get any of these features. So please take a look at all of this. Next one is security. So if your website needs millions of concurrent users, it probably also means that you're going to experience DDoS attacks sometime in the future. Okay, it happens. It's just part of business. You just have to have the infrastructure in place to deal with all of this, so that you don't get a crazy bill, or you don't have to deal with a crazy downtime, right? So if you don't know what DDoS is, it's basically when a hacker tries to bring down one of your services by burning out that service, right? And so they can send pings, they can call your API. I mean, there's a lot more stuff than just DDoS attacks for security, such as SSL encryptions, backups, version control. In case something goes wrong with your code, you can just revert back, right? So you need all of this in place. Next is my favorite one, which is customer support. If they have a chatbot on their site where you can communicate directly with them and ask them questions and get answers, more importantly, then I definitely suggest, going with them. If not, maybe it's time to look at someone else who can provide this kind of priority support. Next is real-time data. So they give you real-time functionality, which is basically dynamic content on your website. So typically speaking, most hosting providers or shared hosting providers with limited features will essentially only give you static sites. That means you can't have something that updates. Everything is going to be hard cached. That means it's going to show old, stale data all the time. You do not want this, okay? And that's why, I'm using Nextjs15 in this project, and the reason's because Next15 will not cache any responses unless you explicitly say, cache this response, right? Unless you say it, it's not going to cache it. But some hosting providers will cache all responses. So you want to make sure that you're using the right front-end stack, and at the same time, your hosting provider gives you the ability to not only host static sites, but literally puts a lot more time into real-time functionality and advanced caching options where you can cache certain pages, certain responses that are static, and everything else that's dynamic. You can use dynamic data. So when should you consider looking into all of these in such great detail? Well, I already mentioned, first of all, if you are a service provider or if you're building something for your client that needs high traffic, high scalability, and at the same time, it grows 99.99% uptime, all this kind of stuff. If you're looking for something like this, then you're definitely going to need to look into this. Another thing is if you are an enterprise grade company, right? So if you are an enterprise grade company and you have 50 to 500 or even 500 plus employees, and you need a dashboard, some sort of a system where your team members can do work for you, and at the same time, your infrastructure can handle all of the traffic you're going to get, especially if you have a sale, right? Imagine you have an e-commerce store and you have a Cyber Monday sale. You're going to get stormed, right? And so you should be able to help, support this, help your customers get a seamless experience, and especially at the enterprise level when you have so many customers, sometimes even 26,000 visitors per hour, right? And if you have something like this, you definitely want to consider this. Now, what are situations where you don't need to consider any of these options? Of course, if you are just a student or something and you're just building maybe a portfolio for yourself to, just have it there. But if you ask me, if your goal here is just to create a site to get 5 monthly visitors, then you probably don't even need a website. You can just use your Instagram profile. I don't even know why you want a website to yourself. Even if you're trying to build something static, it doesn't mean you don't need this. It's just that if you're thinking in the long term in terms of growth, in terms of hey, I'm building a website because I want traffic, right? And so then you're going to need to go with a provider that gives you just enough so that you're not overpaying for any of the features that you're not going to use, and you're using only the things that you're paying for. Now, this brings me to my next point. Your hosting provider needs to be cost efficient. Okay. And more importantly, they need to be transparent with everything. So this is one big problem in this space, which is there's a lot of hidden costs. I hate this personally. I really don't like this when, hosting providers kind of hide all of this. And so you need to make sure that your hosting provider is publicly sharing all of the pricing page, pricing page details, and it's clear. You know exactly how much you're going to be paying, so you don't end up with a $7,000 monthly bill. And finally, you want to look at customer reviews. Did someone love the product so much that they left a review? If they did, I think that is a green flag. Okay, look at what other people's experiences are by using these hosting providers, and that way you can consider maybe giving it a shot. Now, yes, there are so many things that I just spoke about, and there are so many options out there. You might not even know which one to choose, which one gives you exactly what we spoke about. And so I did some research to first see what problems you guys face while building WordPress sites. And based on the responses I got from the polls, I went ahead and did some research and found a couple hosting providers that do a really good job. And one of these hosting providers actually reached out to me saying they have something awesome for you guys. And this company is called Rapyd Cloud. They're also the sponsor of today's video, so thank you so much Rapyd Cloud for making this possible for the Web Prodigies community. Now, Rapyd Cloud is a high-performance WordPress hosting provider that is built specifically for businesses with dynamic and content-rich websites. Now, like I mentioned, they also promise every single thing that I just mentioned right here, and they are mainly for high-traffic sites. So that means they are powered by Lightspeed enterprise technologies, advanced caching mechanisms, and they're backed by AWS, so you are pretty much going to get exceptional performance. And so not only do they offer some cutting-edge technologies, they also focus on the 5 things that we spoke about: speed, scalability, security options, awesome customer support, and they're very transparent with all of their pricing. So this is definitely something you have to look into. All right, guys, so let's take a look at the awesome offer they have for the Web Prodigies community. So you can go to their website and open up an account, or you can use my link in the description to get a free trial. This also gives me a little bit of a kickback, so thank you so much for supporting me. You can get a free account with my link only, so please use the link in the description if you want to get access to the discount that I'm going to mention right now. You will get 25% off on your annual plan. Okay, this is a massive saving, and you can just take a look at any other provider. I'm sure for the value they offer, it's so much better to go with Rapyd Cloud. Okay, and so you get 25% off on the annual plan. And if you wanted to use a monthly plan, which I wouldn't recommend, I would say go for the annual plan, because we're in this for the long term, right? We're not going to open up a website for 10 days. So it's probably going to be for lifetime. So if you're starting a business, you definitely want to save more. And in the future, you can always downgrade to a monthly plan if you'd like. On the monthly plan, you get 10% off on your monthly subscription. Okay, so use a link in the description and grab your free account. Now, most importantly, do not forget to use this code at checkout to apply this discount. Okay, so please use this code WEBP at checkout in order to grab your 25% off your annual plan or 10% off your monthly plan. Once again, thank you so much for using my link in the description. And now let's move on to the next section. I'm going to show you how to use Rapyd Cloud and just pretty much give you a demo of the tool so you can see exactly why they're so powerful. All right, so first up, if you have any questions, you can always sign in and ask them directly through the chatbot here. They will assist you and make sure you're all set. The first cool feature is the migration feature. You can migrate your current WordPress site into Rapyd Cloud by just contacting them through this button. Next is cron jobs. You can set up activities and timed events. Under the cache tab, you can access advanced level caching strategies for your WordPress site. Then comes the database. You can also store data inside Rapyd Cloud. You also have a bunch of security options, like I mentioned. You have a file manager to store all of your WordPress files, file access control. The server tab will show you all of the tools that are currently running on your WordPress site. You can also access the live link of your website by clicking on the domain tab, and there you go. This is the website that we currently have. You can also check your backups. So every 15 minutes, your stuff will obviously be saved, and you can access all of that in here. You can check the stats, you can check overview, you can check traffic, and you can also access all of the plugins directly from here. This is another one of the problems that you guys mentioned, and Rapyd Cloud does an awesome job with helping out with this stuff. All right, guys, now click the link in the description. It's going to take you to the pricing page. Now, this is where we can set up our account. So the first thing you need to do is click on the annual plan because we want the most amount of savings. And you're going to save additional 25% when you use my code at checkout, right? So make sure you click on the annual plan. And again, you can also choose the 2-year plan if you want, but I would prefer this in my situation. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. And now in terms of which plan you need here, I would suggest going with the startup, and this is actually what I require, so I will select this one as well. Now, there is one more called the enterprise level plan. Now, this is if, like I mentioned, you have a big team and you want even more, upgraded services like a light support. You get free migration services, all that kind of stuff. And so if you need some additional services, then maybe you might want to consider the enterprise plan, okay? But for now, I think in my given situation, and probably most of you guys, you're probably going to need the startup one plan. So go ahead and click on start for free, and that's going to take you to the plan selection page. And now I'm going to select the free trial because I want to first set up my account before I pay. And even if you do choose to pay right away, you have a 14-day money-back guarantee. And they will also give you support if you require any support to set up things for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to select the free plan and then go ahead and add your credit card details in here. And the most important one, please do not forget this. In order to get the discount, you need to add the code WEBP and hit apply. And then once you're done, you can also verify here to see the 25% additional savings, and you're saving close to $400, which is massive, okay? And so once you're done, go ahead and click on start your free trial. I've already created my account, so let's go ahead and take a look at the dashboard. All right, so I've gone ahead and created my account. And the first thing is you might be prompted to create a site, and it'll also show you a pop-up. If it does, go ahead and proceed through. I've already created my site, but if you haven't, you can click on the add site right here and proceed with creating your website, okay? So once you're done with this, go ahead and click into this. And like I said, you have a ton of important resources that you can access from here, such as, checking the traffic of your site, the usage of your server, more in terms of WooCommerce, the plugin management, which is what you guys wanted, and a lot more stuff inside here. Okay, I'm sure you watched the demo, but for now, I want to go ahead and deploy this stuff and pretty much set up the same stuff that I have locally inside here. Okay, so the first thing is click on your WordPress account right here, and then you're going to find WordPress admin, right? So click on this WordPress admin, and it's going to take you into your admin dashboard. All right, so there you go. Now we are inside our dashboard. The first thing you're going to do is click on plugins, add new plugin, and you're going to look up WooCommerce. Okay, so just look this up real quick, and that's going to show up in here. You want to install that plugin and click on activate. Now, I've already done that, so that's why it's showing active, but make sure you download and install that. Now, it will have a couple onboarding pages. Please skip through that whole process. You're going to find a button called skip. Make sure you click on skip, and then that's essentially going to send you to another page, which will ask you which location is your site hosted in, and just put your location. I'm just going to put United States, and then I'm going to click on continue, and then that's going to take me to this page right here where I can see my WooCommerce dashboard. Okay, skip over this for now. We don't need it. Now, I would recommend if you have time in the future, yes, go in and do all this stuff, but I want to show you how to upload all of our products, right? So next thing is you want to go into the products tab. I'm sorry, guys, you want to go into settings tab, click on advanced, click on REST API, and now you're going to add a key. So if you don't have a key, I mean, of course, you're not going to have one because this is the production Rapyd, the Rapyd Cloud link. So go ahead and click on add key, and then add the word products in here. Please don't make this error. Okay, add the word products, and then click on generate API key. And then once that's done, if you click back on advanced and REST API, you should find that right here. All right, now once you're done with that, the next stage is to upload all of our products into our new Rapyd Cloud dashboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on products, and you're going to notice nothing is going to be in here for you, right? And so what we could do is import all of our products from our local environments. Now here's something you need to keep in mind. All of these products, I basically spent some time and just created a bunch of products in here. And the thing to keep in mind here is these products are all in the local environment, right? So you can see it says not secure because it's a local testing WordPress environment. And if you look at Rapyd Cloud, you're getting a free SSL certificate as well, right? And so because of that, you cannot access these images publicly, right? So if you send the link to someone else, it may not work. And so how do you get these images? Well, we're going to need to upload them inside the media folder, and then we have to attach all of these products to the product itself, okay? So what you're going to do is go into your media files and click on add new media file, and this is inside the Rapyd Cloud dashboard. And then you're going to click on select files, and then you're going to go into the Discord, and if you have already installed, downloaded the assets folder, you're going to find a folder for images only, right? So drag those images into this and then essentially upload that into the media library. Once that's done, we're going to go into products, and all we're going to do now is we need to import all of the products in here. So go back to our local dashboard. We're going to click on export, click on generate CSV, and that's going to download a file for us. And so the next step is go back to our Rapyd Cloud dashboard in here. We're going to click on import, choose file, and we're going to choose the new file that was uploaded. So I'm just going to click on this one, and then I'm going to click on continue. And now this is important, right? Because remember, I mentioned that the images are not going to be accessible because these are local, right? You see it says .local. So what you're going to need to do is click on do not import for the images, and then go ahead and click on run the importer. And you might see an error, and if you do, that's fine. Okay, looks like I didn't see any error. I thought we're probably going to have some more because of this the file format, but okay, everything looks good. Then go ahead and click on view products. It's going to take you in here, but yes, of course, you don't have the images. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to map some of the images that I've already added. So I'm going to click on the product itself, click on set product image, and I'm just going to select some images from here and just attach them to the product, and then click on update. So go ahead and just take 2 minutes to add these products, and then we'll proceed. All right, so now I have created all of the products because I've imported it from the other store, and I've also mapped the images to it. So like I said, you can click on add product image and then select it from the media file, and then click on update. And now I did that for everything, so I have my products ready to go. But now we have to update our front end. So remember, we added an API key, right? So I hope you copied and pasted that API key inside your code base. If you haven't already, no worries. You can delete this and you can add another one, right? So you can revoke this and add the same API key with the same word, but I've already added my keys to my code base, so let's proceed from there. Once you're done with the API keys, the next thing you need is to visit the store, and you want to copy this link, right? And you can visit the store by clicking on this dropdown right here and click on visit store. And then I'm going to go into my actions product.typescript, and I'm going to replace this with the new link. Okay, so before this it was .local, now this is a production link. And then everything else can stay as is. Just make sure you have the same description name products right here, or else it's not going to work, right? So have the same description in here as well. Once you're done changing the website URL, open up the terminal, click on enter bun run dev, hit enter, and then refresh the browser and make sure you are on localhost 3000. Once you're done, you should see all of our products come in directly from our production Rapyd Cloud WordPress backend. Okay, so great job. You now know how to set up a production grade WordPress as a headless CMS for your front-end Next.js application. And just to verify that everything works, you can click on products, you can add them to the cart, you can change the quantity as well, right? And let's make sure our state management works. Okay, awesome, state management works as well. And I'm going to try to add some stuff in here. Let's try to increment. Awesome, and then you can see the the price also changes as you increment, right? And now if you click on checkout, it's going to take you to our Stripe page. Awesome. Now, another thing to keep in mind is you can use other things that WooCommerce offers, like payment forms, or they have their own Woo payment structure, right? So you can use that if you'd like to kind of automate the process, use their components, and there's so much more you can do with this. I'm sure you guys are very creative, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to build. And that's it. That's all you need to do to set up WordPress as a headless CMS for your Next.js build. Now, if you found this helpful and you want more helpful resources just like this, then I definitely think subscribing would help you more. So don't forget to click that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you can get notified the next time we post awesome videos just like this. All right, Prodigies, that's it for today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.